Have you ever found yourself caught in a peculiar, painful loop? You give your absolute all to a connection, nurturing it, striving for it, seeing its glimmering potential, only for it to remain perpetually just almost. It feels tantalizingly close, a promise whispered on the wind, yet the true commitment, the deep merging of lives, the secure landing, remains perpetually out of reach. You pour your heart, your unwavering energy, your very essence into bridging that invisible gap, hoping that your shared dedication, your boundless patience will finally complete the picture. But instead, you find yourself perpetually on the precipice of what could be, tragically, consistently isn't. Why is it that even when you offer everything you have, your empathy, your boundless understanding, your limitless capacity to care, it still doesn't feel like enough? What if I told you that the love you keep chasing, these elusive almosts, are actually a profound reflection of the love you were denied, or the love you were subtly taught you had to earn way back when your foundational blueprints for connection were first being formed? This is where we dive in. At Love Threads, we don't just talk about relationships, we deconstruct them. We blend authentic, grounded insights with robust, evidence-based psychology, giving you the real intelligence on why we connect, why we sometimes misstep, and how to truly thrive when love feels like a constantly shifting landscape. Tonight, we're unraveling why we keep choosing the almosts and the profound, often unconscious journey to break free from the threads that hold us just shy of true reciprocal connection. We live in a culture saturated with ideals of perfect partnership, from sweeping romantic comedies to social media feeds showcasing seemingly effortless unions. We're taught that the path to happiness lies in finding the one, in selfless compromise, in caring deeply for another, and in a seamless merging of two lives into one. We're told that patience and persistence are virtues, that true love is worth waiting for, and that effort always pays off. But what happens when that relentless pursuit of connection, that virtuous drive to care and connect, subtly, insidiously, transforms into a slow, silent collapse of self? What happens when the very desire to merge with another causes you to shrink your authentic self, to twist your unique shape, to conform, to contort yourself into a space that was never truly designed for you, merely to fit into someone else's incomplete blueprint? In a world overflowing with dating apps, presenting an almost infinite buffet of potential options, coupled with an endless stream of self-help advice, promising keys to unlock perfect partnerships, why do so many of us still feel so profoundly lonely within our connections? Why do we cling so desperately to relationships that feel like perpetually unfinished symphonies, always hinting at a grand crescendo that never quite arrives, leaving us with a persistent, nagging sense of not quite, what if, or if only? It's a cruel paradox. The more options we seemingly have, the harder it sometimes feels to make a definitive choice, or to be chosen wholly and unequivocally. You're not too much. This is a crucial, foundational truth to hold on to. But perhaps somewhere along your developmental journey, in the delicate crucible of early attachment, you absorbed a powerful, often unspoken lesson that to stay loved, to maintain that vital connection, you needed to shrink. You learned to diminish your authentic desires, to silence your true needs, to make yourself smaller, more palatable, less demanding, perhaps even invisible. This subtle, unconscious contract becomes the very algorithm of your relational navigation, unconsciously guiding you down a maze where the exit, true, complete, and reciprocal belonging, always seems to be around the next elusive corner. We find ourselves caught in a relational void, a deep existential ache, constantly seeking to fill it with external validation, particularly from those who offer just enough to keep us hopeful, just enough to tantalize, but never enough to make us feel truly secure, truly chosen. These almosts become familiar echoes of past experiences, comforting in their very incompletion because the unfamiliarity of true, unwavering presence and complete reciprocity can paradoxically feel terrifying. It's like being drawn to a dimly lit room because the full, exposing light of day feels too vulnerable, too demanding. This cycle isn't a flaw in your character. It's a deeply ingrained pattern, a relational wound seeking resolution, a longing for wholeness that continues to play out in the arena of your most intimate connections, always pointing back to something deeper within. The whispers of the almost. To truly understand the visceral impact of the almost, let's listen to the stories woven into the fabric of modern connection. These aren't just abstract theories. They are the lived experiences of hearts caught in this particular relational pattern. The story of the hopeful giver, the eternal potential. Imagine an individual radiating warmth and capacity for deep connection, whose life is often a tapestry of unfulfilled potential in their relationships. This person is intelligent, deeply kind, and possesses an almost boundless empathy. They frequently find themselves drawn to partners who have immense, yet consistently unrealized potential. Creative individuals still waiting for their breakthrough, ambitious dreamers with grand visions but little consistent follow-through, or emotionally guarded people who, this hopeful giver, believes just need the right kind of unconditional love and patience to finally open up and commit. Their current almost connection might be with someone charismatic and charming, but consistently inconsistent. This partner will sweep the hopeful giver off their feet with passionate declarations and thoughtful, albeit rare, gestures, only to disappear for days, sometimes weeks, with vague excuses about demanding schedules or personal struggles. They speak of a future together, when my big project takes off, after I finish this intense period of self-discovery, once I sort out my past challenges, but never quite take concrete, sustained steps to bridge the gap between their words and their actions. The hopeful giver, driven by their own deep-seated desire for a grand, passionate, and complete love, perhaps reflecting the lover archetype in its hopeful, yet sometimes ungrounded and overly optimistic form, sees only the partner they believe this individual can be. They pour their energy into supporting this person's dreams, listening to their struggles for hours on end, and waiting patiently for them to become the partner they know is in there, just beneath the surface. Friends and well-meaning observers might gently warn, they just don't seem fully present. But the hopeful giver dismisses their concerns. You just don't see their potential, they'll insist. They're just scared of true intimacy. Their anxious attachment system is highly activated by the partner's intermittent presence. Each time the elusive partner reappears with a glimpse of warmth, a surge of hope, and reinforcing dopamine, locks the cycle more firmly in place. This individual is unconsciously replaying a childhood pattern where a primary caregiver was emotionally inconsistent, showering them with affection one day and withdrawing the next. They learned that love was about patient waiting and proving oneself worthy of the brief moments of connection. They feel like the seeker, always pursuing a prize that constantly moves further away, convinced that if they just try hard enough, if they just wait long enough, they will finally achieve the secure connection they crave. The almost keeps them forever striving, convinced that their effort will eventually transform the potential into reality, echoing the systemic loyalty of always striving for what is just out of reach, a pattern potentially inherited from a lineage of individuals who endured lifetimes of unfulfilled hopes and endless waiting. Their brain is wired to find security in this chase, tragically confusing the intensity of the pursuit with the genuine depth and safety of the connection itself. The story of the independent achiever, the fear of being chosen. Then there's the highly capable individual, often professionally successful and outwardly composed, who excels in almost every area of life except love. This person is often charming, attractive, and highly competent, easily drawing others into their orbit. They will consistently date interesting, engaging partners for months, sometimes even a year or more. They will share intimate details about their life, introduce partners to their close circle of friends, and create a strong emotional bond that feels promising. But just as the relationship reaches a natural point where deeper commitment or defining the future becomes the inevitable next step, a serious talk about living together, meeting immediate family, or discussing monogamy, this individual suddenly feels an overwhelming urge to flee. They might become subtly critical, find small, previously unnoticed flaws in their partner, or simply create emotional distance through increased busyness or withdrawal, eventually ending the relationship with phrases like, "I just don't feel that spark anymore," or "I think you deserve someone who can give you more than I can." This individual frequently embodies the avoidant attachment style almost perfectly. From a young age, a primary caregiver, though perhaps loving, was often overwhelmed, emotionally unavailable, or leaned heavily on the child for emotional support, subtly stifling the child's own developing autonomy and emotional expression. They learned that deep connection meant being responsible for another's emotional well-being, a burden that felt suffocating and overwhelming. They cultivated a fierce independence, embracing the lone wanderer archetype, prioritizing their freedom and self-sufficiency above all else. Their unconscious shadow fear is engulfment, the pervasive, terrifying idea that if they fully commit, if they allow themselves to be truly seen and dependent, they will lose themselves, their autonomy, their very identity. The almost relationship is their unconscious safety net. It allows them to experience intimacy up to a point, validating their desirability and capacity for connection without ever having to cross the threshold into true vulnerability and the perceived risk of losing themselves. Their systemic loyalty might be to a lineage of individuals who felt trapped by marital obligations, or women who implicitly witnessed how marriage led to the loss of individual identity or freedom. Their nervous system registers deep intimacy as a profound threat, triggering a deeply ingrained flight response, a neural pathway formed to protect them from perceived loss of self. Their brain is subtly wired to prefer the chase, the initial connection, the freedom of the undefined, over the settled, potentially constricting reality of profound commitment, often confusing the thrill of pursuit with genuine, stable love. The story of the peace weaver, the protector of harmony. And finally, consider a gentle, empathetic individual whose inner strength is often overshadowed by a profound tendency to prioritize peace and harmony in relationships, often at the expense of their own needs and desires. This person grew up in a household rife with unspoken tension. Perhaps their parents rarely argued openly, but the emotional atmosphere was thick with unresolved conflict, resentment, or a pervasive sense of unease. They learned early to be the peacemaker, the one who anticipated conflict and subtly smoothed things over. This cultivated the caregiver archetype to an extreme, driven by a deep-seated fear of disruption, a profound longing for external approval, and a belief that their role is to maintain equilibrium. In their adult relationships, this peace weaver is often drawn to partners who are emotionally volatile or who create drama, consciously or unconsciously. They become the calm in their partner's storm, absorbing their anger, validating their frustrations, and subtly but consistently putting their own needs aside to manage their partner's emotional states.
They'll agree to plans they dread, bite their tongue on opinions they hold strongly, and offer support even when they're utterly depleted, all in an effort to avoid conflict or perceived rejection. Their current almost connection might be with a partner who frequently expresses discontent with various aspects of their life, seeking constant reassurance and validation from the peace weaver. They never quite commit to finding their own solutions, instead heavily relying on the peace weaver to be their emotional anchor. The peace weaver feels an immense internalized sense of responsibility for this partner's happiness and emotional well-being, believing that if their partner is unhappy, they have somehow failed. This individual often embodies an anxious attachment style, their hypervigilance honed by a childhood where they needed to manage their parents' emotional states to feel secure. The partner's almost readiness for change or consistent happiness keeps the peace weaver hooked, playing out an unconscious loyalty to their family system's pattern of maintaining fragile peace through individual sacrifice. They fear that if their partner were truly happy and stable, they might not be needed, activating their orphan fear of abandonment and irrelevance. Their brain reinforces this pattern by rewarding them with temporary relief when they successfully soothed their partner, even if it's at their own long-term expense and leading to profound self-neglect. These anecdotal threads, while distinct, collectively illustrate how the almost is not a singular phenomenon, but a multifaceted dynamic deeply rooted in individual attachment histories, unconscious archetypal drives, systemic family patterns, and the very neurobiology of love and craving. Understanding these layers is the crucial first step towards breaking free from their powerful hold.
Psychological depth and education. What you're experiencing isn't a personal failure of effort, a deficit of desirability, or a fundamental brokenness within you. Far from it. This persistent pattern of choosing and staying in the almost is often a profound manifestation of fusion, a psychological state where emotional and psychological boundaries between self and other are blurred, often learned in environments where your autonomy wasn't fully celebrated, or where your worth felt tied to fulfilling others' expectations. It's the deeply ingrained survival blueprint of someone who, perhaps, was never fully allowed to exist in their complete authenticity, to express their inherent needs without fear of withdrawal or punishment, or to receive consistent, unconditional love. Your nervous system, meticulously wired during critical developmental periods through your earliest attachment experiences, doesn't always feel genuinely safe in healthy, stable, reciprocal love. Why? Because it's unconsciously searching for the familiar, even if painful, dynamic of earning affection, of fixing the unfixable, of pursuing what remains perpetually out of reach. That elusive chase, the constant effort, the intermittent reinforcement, can paradoxically feel like love because it's what your system learned to equate with connection, however tenuous. Adult attachment theory, the anxious avoidant dance in detail. Let's delve deeper into why your nervous system might struggle with the perceived safety of healthy, secure love, focusing on the often played out anxious avoidant trap that perfectly fuels the almost dynamic. The anxiously attached individual. Individuals with an anxious attachment style typically developed this pattern in childhood due to inconsistent or unpredictable caregiving. Imagine a young child whose primary caregiver was sometimes warm, present, and nurturing, responding beautifully to their cries for comfort and connection, but at other times was emotionally distant, preoccupied, or even unresponsive. This unpredictability creates a deep, lingering uncertainty within the child about whether their fundamental needs for safety and connection will be consistently met. Their developing nervous system learns to be hypervigilant for any subtle sign of distance, withdrawal, or potential abandonment. This leads to a profound, often unconscious fear of rejection and a deep-seated, almost insatiable need for closeness, validation, and reassurance.
In almost relationships, when an anxiously attached person encounters a partner who provides intermittent reinforcement, a classic hot and cold behavioral pattern, or an elusive commitment, it chillingly mimics their early experiences. The unpredictability doesn't deter them. In fact, it often activates their attachment system with intense urgency. They become highly focused on the partner, often over-functioning by giving excessively, bending over backward, trying to fix the partner's perceived commitment issues, or even trying to prove their worth. This intense pursuit, often termed protest behavior by attachment theorists, is an unconscious, desperate attempt to force closeness and earn the consistent love they crave. The very act of chasing, of striving to bridge the gap, becomes equated with love itself, even if it's deeply painful and unfulfilling. Their deepest fear is abandonment, and paradoxically, the almost relationship keeps that fear alive, providing a constant, albeit fruitless opportunity to try and solve the problem of inconsistent love, a problem that cannot be solved by trying harder in an unhealthy dynamic. Here we see shades of the orphan archetype, constantly seeking a home, a true belonging, but often feeling isolated even within connections. They are also the seeker, tirelessly searching for completion externally. The avoidantly attached individual.
The avoidantly attached individual. Conversely, individuals with an avoidant attachment style typically developed this pattern from early experiences, where their emotional needs were consistently dismissed, minimized, or where they were subtly or overtly encouraged to be highly independent and self-reliant. Emotional expression might have been discouraged, or bids for comfort met with coldness, demands for self-sufficiency, or even punishment. They learned early on that relying on others often led to disappointment, engulfment, or a feeling of being burdened. As a result, they developed a powerful defense mechanism, extreme emotional self-sufficiency, often prioritizing fierce independence and autonomy over deep intimacy. They may genuinely desire connection, but become profoundly uncomfortable when it gets too close, too vulnerable. The almost relationship perfectly orchestrates this dysfunctional dance. The anxiously attached person is constantly trying to close the emotional or physical gap, driven by a deep longing for security, while the avoidantly attached person is consistently, often unconsciously, creating or maintaining it, driven by a deep fear of losing themselves. This leads to a perpetual state of longing, yearning, and unresolved distance that never fully resolves into a secure, reciprocally balanced attachment. Archetypes, the projection of unmet needs and unacknowledged aspects. From a depth psychological perspective, the almost relationship can be a profound, albeit painful exercise in projection. We project our most profound unmet needs, our idealized version of what love should be, and even unacknowledged aspects of our own shadow onto these elusive partners. The inner other and the idealized other. Concepts within depth psychology suggest that we carry an inner image of our opposite gender, formed from personal experiences and collective archetypes. We often project this idealized internal image onto potential partners, seeking a sense of wholeness or completion through them. In an almost relationship, the partner may embody just enough of this projected ideal to keep us hooked, hinting at the full potential of this archetypal union, but never delivering it fully. We become fixated on the potential we project onto them, rather than their actual present reality. The almost partner becomes a screen onto which we paint our deepest desires for connection and completeness, delaying the necessary work of finding that completeness within ourselves, the shadow and unacknowledged parts. The almost can also be a canvas for our shadow, the unconscious aspects of ourselves, including our repressed desires, fears, insecurities, and even our unused potential. We might unconsciously seek out partners who embody traits we deny in ourselves, or who allow us to play out dynamics that keep us from facing our own limitations or patterns of self-sabotage. For instance, if you have a deep-seated fear of true intimacy, your own avoidant shadow,
Choosing an almost partner allows you to maintain distance while still engaging in relationship activity, thereby avoiding the confrontation with your own fear of commitment or vulnerability. The almost relationship can also be a safe container for enacting the martyr archetype, where one continually sacrifices for an elusive goal, or the victim archetype, feeling perpetually let down. When the relationship never fully materializes, it forces us, eventually, to withdraw these projections and confront the fact that what we were seeking was always, in part, an internal landscape, an aspect of ourselves waiting to be integrated. The disappointment forces the shadow to the surface, demanding attention. Family systems and systemic entanglements. This is where codependency, a relational pattern characterized by an excessive reliance on others for approval and identity, often meets loyalty to invisible family burdens. Insights from family systems work offer a powerful, almost mystical lens through which to understand why we might unconsciously choose the almost. It suggests that we are not isolated individuals, but rather part of a larger family system, and that unresolved issues or traumas within that system can manifest in our current relationships through unconscious loyalties or entanglements. Unresolved systemic trauma and entanglements. Consider this. Did a parent, grandparent, or even an ancestor experience profound betrayal, chronic abandonment, unrequited love, or a significant loss that was never fully grieved or integrated into the family narrative? Systemic approaches suggest that descendants can unconsciously carry the burden or finish the story of these unresolved traumas. If an ancestor experienced perpetual longing or an incomplete love story, a descendant might find themselves repeatedly drawn into almost relationships, unconsciously reenacting that same theme of perpetual longing and unfulfilled connection. It's a profound, often heartbreaking, unseen loyalty, as if trying to bring peace or resolution to an older, systemic wound. You're not just living your life, you're echoing a larger family pattern, perhaps embodying the martyr or sacrificer archetypes for the system. Good child syndrome and compensation. In families where a child felt implicitly or explicitly responsible for a parent's happiness or had to suppress their own needs and feelings to maintain peace or ensure survival, they might internalize a pattern of perpetual overgiving and almost receiving. This learned survival strategy, being the good child who sacrifices their own needs for the system, translates directly into adult relationships. They unconsciously believe they must continually earn love, that their self-sacrifice will eventually lead to true connection, or that their selfless efforts can somehow fix the other person or the relationship. This becomes a deep, often unconscious loyalty to a survival strategy learned in childhood, a belief that love is conditional, something to be earned through perpetual effort, rather than freely given and received. They might also embody the caregiver archetype, believing their worth is solely tied to nurturing others. The almost relationship, then, is far from a random occurrence or a series of unfortunate coincidences. It is instead a meticulously woven thread in your personal and ancestral tapestry. It's a recurring pattern, a deeply ingrained blueprint, attempting to reveal something critical about your deepest relational wounds, your unaddressed fears, and your most enduring, often unconscious, loyalties to your past and your family system. Understanding this allows us to move from blame to compassion and from repetition to conscious transformation. Neuroscience of love and connection, the brain's role in reinforcing almosts. The brain itself plays a role in keeping us hooked on almosts. Research on the brain chemistry of love and attraction highlights the powerful role of dopamine in the early stages of romantic love. The unpredictability inherent in an almost relationship can trigger an even stronger dopamine response. This intermittent reinforcement, receiving just enough attention or affection to keep hope alive, followed by periods of distance, can be highly addictive. It's the same reward mechanism that makes gambling so compelling. The uncertainty of the reward makes the pursuit more intense. lighting up the brain's reward pathways. This craving circuit can override logical thought, keeping us fixated on the almost partner even when it's clearly not serving us. Further studies integrating neuroscience, arousal regulation, and attachment theory show how our brains are wired for love, but can also get stuck in maladaptive patterns based on early experiences, making it challenging to shift out of the anxious avoidant loop without conscious intervention. Developmental stages: identity versus intimacy. Psychosocial developmental theories offer another layer of insight. One stage, typically in early adulthood, posits that individuals must first establish a strong sense of identity before they can form truly intimate relationships. If identity formation is incomplete or fragile, individuals may seek to define themselves through their relationships, making them susceptible to the almost dynamic where their sense of self is in constant flux, dependent on the elusive other. The almost can feel like a perpetual state of identity seeking within the relationship, rather than bringing a formed identity to the relationship. This pursuit can delay the authentic resolution of this developmental stage, leaving one feeling isolated even when seemingly connected.
The turning point. But what if, beneath the relentless overgiving, the patient waiting, and the tireless effort to make an almost relationship work, there wasn't a flaw in your design, but rather your soul's most profound, often unheard cry to finally be seen? Not just for what you do, the efforts you make, the love you pour out, but for who you are in your unadorned authenticity, with all your needs, vulnerabilities, and unique brilliance. What if the relentless pursuit of the almost was actually a profound, if misguided, attempt to heal an old wound by trying to change the past in the present, to turn an unrequited childhood longing into a reciprocated adult love, to finally prove your worth to someone who never fully recognized it? This is the turning point. Healing begins not when you find the right person to finally complete you, but when we consciously choose to stop outsourcing our inherent worth to the elusive echoes of our childhood, to the unfulfilled promises of past relationships, or to the tantalizing yet ultimately empty potential of someone who cannot or will not meet us fully. It begins when we recognize that the profound, encompassing love we've been trying so desperately to pull from the almost is, in its purest form, the very love we are capable of cultivating within ourselves, a boundless, unconditional wellspring. You absolutely can belong to yourself fully, completely, and unapologetically, without abandoning the innate human desire for deep connection. In fact, it is only when you cultivate that profound sense of internal belonging, when you become your own most reliable source of validation and security, that you can truly enter into relationships that are whole, reciprocal, and genuinely nourishing. These connections become alliances between two whole individuals, rather than two halves desperately seeking completion. The almost then transforms from a painful trap into a profound teacher, preparing you for the real thing. It's a quiet, sacred truth, a knowing that settles deep in your bones. The almost served its purpose. It was simply preparing you for the true connection, once you are ready to receive it, not from a place of deficit, but from a space of abundant self-worth. Rewriting the narrative, reclaiming your story. Breaking free from the magnetic pull of the almost isn't about trying harder to get the elusive person to commit. It's a courageous act of redirecting your energy from the external chase to the profound reclamation of your inner world. This is where you stop trying to finish their story and start writing your own. It involves dismantling the unconscious blueprint that made you believe love had to be earned and replacing it with a new, authentic narrative that honors your inherent worth. This is a dedicated, often challenging, process of intentional action. It's about moving from a state of perpetual longing to one of profound self-possession. Phase 1. The internal audit. Pausing the chase. Before you can build a new way of relating, you must first understand the old one.
The first act of rebellion against the almost is to stop the chase and turn inward. 1. Mindful pause and observation. The next time you feel the familiar impulse to chase, to send that text, to overgive, or to anxiously wait, just pause. Don't act on it. Instead, become a silent observer of your own internal landscape. Ask yourself, what is my body feeling right now? Is there tension in my chest? A knot in my stomach? What emotion is driving this impulse? Is it fear of abandonment, a need for validation, or the ghost of a past longing? This simple, conscious act of separation between feeling and action starts to break the deeply ingrained neural pathways of the chase. You're teaching your nervous system that it is safe to not pursue, that the world won't end just because the almost remains elusive. 2. Trace the echoes of your past. The almost is often a familiar echo. Use journaling as a tool to explore this. Write about your earliest memories of love and connection. Was love a consistent, reliable presence, or was it a flickering flame that you had to work tirelessly to keep lit? Did you feel you had to prove your worthiness to a parent or caregiver? What was the unspoken contract you inherited? By bringing these echoes into conscious awareness, you can begin to see that the pattern isn't a flaw in your present self, but a survival strategy from your past. You can look at that inner child who learned to shrink or chase and offer them the unconditional love they were denied. Phase 2, the rebuilding, nurturing the whole self. The almost relationship thrives on you diminishing yourself. To break free, you must actively and intentionally rebuild the parts of yourself that you sacrificed. 1. Reclaim your voice and your needs. You have a right to your needs, and they are not too much. The core of the almost pattern is the belief that your needs are a burden. Start small. Practice asking for what you want in low-stakes situations. Practice saying no to things that drain you and yes to things that fill you. Your voice has been quieted by the almost, so it must be strengthened. This is the foundation of building healthy boundaries, the honest expression of what you need to feel safe and respected. 2. Cultivate your own symphony. The unfinished symphony of the almost can consume your life. To break its spell, you must consciously begin writing and playing your own symphony. What are your passions, your hobbies, your interests outside of a relationship? What brings you joy, a sense of purpose, and a feeling of being wholly and completely you? Actively invest your time and energy in these pursuits. This builds a robust sense of self-worth that is not dependent on external validation. You become a complete composition, not a half-finished note waiting for someone else to play the rest. Phase 3, the new relationship blueprint, from chasing to choosing. Once you have done the internal work, you are ready to approach relationships from a new place of wholeness, not a void. 1. Define your non-negotiables. You can no longer afford to tolerate the almost. Based on your new self-awareness, define your non-negotiables for a healthy relationship. What does consistent, reciprocal connection actually look like to you? What does commitment sound like? What does respect feel like? This isn't a rigid list of demands, but a new, empowered standard for the kind of connection you deserve. When a new person or an old pattern presents itself, you no longer chase its potential. You measure it against your non-negotiables. If it falls short, you have the courage to walk away. 2. Embrace the courage of secure love. True security can feel foreign and even boring to a system wired for the drama of the almost. It can feel like a lack of passion when it's actually a profound, quiet peace. Be prepared for this discomfort. This is where you practice staying with a partner when you have an urge to create drama. And this is where you practice allowing your new partner to be there for you without the need to prove you are worthy of their presence. Trust that a love that doesn't need to be earned is the most real and sustaining love of all. 3. From mirror to window. The almost was a mirror, reflecting back your past wounds. Your new healthy relationships are a window, offering a clear, unobstructed view into the truth of another person and the beauty of a genuine, reciprocal bond. You are no longer projecting your desires onto an elusive partner. You are seeing them for who they are and allowing them to see you fully and completely, without the need for either of you to shrink.
Conclusion: empowerment and reflection. The journey out of the almost trap is a courageous path towards self-reclamation. It's about dismantling the belief that your worth is measured by how much you give or sacrifice, and replacing it with the profound truth that your worth is inherent simply because you exist. By understanding your unmet emotional needs, cultivating a strong sense of self-differentiation, and establishing healthy boundaries, you can transform relationships from draining entanglements into spaces of mutual growth and authentic connection. This path demands patience, compassion for yourself, and the willingness to navigate discomfort. But the reward is immense. A life where you are fully present, authentically expressed, and capable of fostering relationships that truly nourish and uplift you. It's about creating love threads that are strong, flexible, and beautifully intertwined without ever losing their individual integrity. Explorations of modern intimacy often highlight that relationships thrive not on fusion, but on the delicate balance between connection and individual autonomy, a concept also championed in discussions of ethical, transformative love, which emphasizes conscious loving relationships beyond mere romantic ideals. The neuroscience of love and connection, with insights from biological anthropology on brain chemistry and evolutionary drives, and the integration of neuroscience, arousal regulation, and attachment theory, further illuminates how our brains are wired for secure, balanced bonds, not enmeshment or self-erasure. This scientific understanding reinforces the profound human need for both connection and individuality, showing that truly thriving relationships are built on two whole individuals, not halves, trying to complete each other. Have you recognized yourself or a pattern you've experienced in why we keep choosing the almosts? What steps are you taking, or what insights have you gained on your journey to reclaim your identity and set healthier boundaries? Share your experiences and reflections in the comments below, and let's continue to unravel the heart of modern connection, one insightful thread at a time. Hit that subscribe button now.